So, Toronto Defiant. First of all, I'd just like to say, what an absolute dumpster. I don't even want to... I was about to say dumpster fire. I keep saying dumpster fire. It's wrong. The dumpster fire doesn't really express how shit the season was for the Toronto Defiant. Let me try and think of the word. Can you think of the word, chat? Just profoundly disappointing to the point where I don't even want to talk about them. I don't even get angry about them like I do about Dallas or Houston. I just don't give a fuck. They have just made me utterly apathetic. A cesspit. A burning swamp. Yeah, it was poop. It was mega poop. Toronto Defiant is like Sideshow's medical career. Yeah, a little bit like that. It barely existed. It was stillborn. They are an abortion of a team. Right, so let's run through the Toronto Defiant. They started off with a full Korean roster that were all signed to 1+1s by the look of it. You know, guys like Aid, guys like Ivy, Neko, Roki, the Yakpung. These guys signed on 1+1s, the team option. The same thing that the Atlanta Reign did. It's a reasonably smart thing to do because you see whether it works out in the first year with the expansion team, and you can feel free to make as many changes as you like for 2020. It did not work out. They had to pivot halfway through the year to bring in, first of all, I'm 37, and then a bunch of Western players. Gods, Logics, Mangachu, Sharik. Now, from what I've heard from talking to some of the players as well, this was just a team without any team identity. They didn't really talk to each other. They didn't hang out with each other. They didn't bond as a team. They didn't feel like a team. It was just a collection of work colleagues that had to turn up and play video games, and then they went back home and didn't really enjoy being with each other, I guess. Darwish XO, thank you for the tier 1 sub. So, what should the Toronto Defiant do next year? The answer is, they could do anything. They could do whatever the fuck they want. Ivy was somebody that was fairly... we expected reasonably good things coming out from him. Unfortunately, he was stuck on, Zarya and then Brig for a small portion of the year as well. And during Stage 4, the team was so fucked up that they had just decided to run with Logics and Mangachu pretty much anyway. And Ivy only came out a little bit. So I don't feel like we've even seen Ivy play at all this season in what he was supposed to play. But having said that, he didn't impress in 2019. If you want to rebuild this team as a Korean team, then you probably don't want to go with Yakpung because he wasn't particularly impressive. But you could try and build around Roki, Aid, and Ivy. You don't want to rebuild around I'm 37. He wasn't impressive either. And Neko looked okay. He's always going to be reasonably good. So there's opportunities there. If you want to build a Western team, though, I don't think you pick up these guys again. Like, if you want to build a Korean team, you could try and salvage something out of the Toronto Defiant. If you want to build a Western team, I'm sorry, Mangachu fans, but you're probably not going to build an entire fucking Western team around just Mangachu, except for the fact that he's Canadian. So if they want to build a full Canadian team, or a large amount of Canadians on the team, then they could. They would have to shell out big money, though, because the other free agent Korean, why am I saying Korean? The other free agent Canadian is Mr. Lane Shawford Roberts, and he's going to want some big money. I can just, obviously. He's, his contract, his first contract is expired, he's a free agent, people are going to be bidding over him. If the Toronto Defiant want him, they're going to have to pay big bucks for him. Now, the good thing is that they don't have anybody on guaranteed contracts. They're not stuck paying some shitlords that they don't want to pay. They can get rid of everybody and start completely fresh if they want to. Note as well. Yeah, good point. They could bid for Note. But for Note as well, they're going to be in a bidding war because other people are going to want to hold on to Note. I can't see a world in which Dallas don't want to hold on to Note. Like, why would you not? The guy's talented. I mean, maybe they would just want to completely rebuild the roster and blow everything up and figure they don't want to use Note. But I think Note will be bid for. So I think Toronto would have to pay quite a lot to get a full... Not full Canadian, but, majority Canadian. But there are opportunities, They've got Banny. Banny is Canadian, right? Yeah. They've got Banny. They've got Shawford. They've got Note. These are 3 Canadian players that you could make an okay team in the Overwatch League from, alongside Mangachu. But I think that's unrealistic. I don't expect that to happen. Why do I not expect that to happen? Because for a team to succeed just by being popular, they have to have been popular for a while. They have to have some fan base already before they move back to Toronto. Like Houston have already built up their popularity. Paris have already built up some of their popularity. If Toronto just came in with 4 Canadian players and then continued to shit the bed, I don't know whether they would really succeed in the same way that Houston Outlaws is succeeding. Mufin. Yeah, they could sign Mufin. Mufin looked like he was pretty decent. The Toronto Defiant, though, you look at this, has infinite flexibility. They need to blow up this team. They need to blow up this team like massively. Toronto are arguably the most disappointing team of 2019, to the point where you don't even think about them when you think about disappointing teams, because they didn't even register disappointment because you had already become numb, because you just expected shittiness from Toronto. So this team definitely needs to blow shit up. It's easier to be popular than it is to be good. So maybe they do go the direction of trying to get Canadian talent. But the Canadian talent, I think, is going to be relatively expensive. I don't know what the hell Toronto are going to do next year. It's just a crapshoot. It's an absolute crapshoot. What did ZP say? Oh, did he get timed out for posting a link? Only subs can post links. What is this? I don't know what this is. You named a gutter runner after me while listening and it already died. Thanks for the gifted sub, Lamb. There you go, ZP. You can now put stuff in. What game is that, even? I don't even know what game that is. In theory, Toronto Defiant, if they had infinite money, could make a really popular team, or they could make a really good team. But we live in reality where Toronto Defiant probably don't have an enormous budget that they can afford to spend on everybody. So they'll probably end up with another mediocre team and have to continue to build from there. But yeah, fuck knows. Toronto are one of the toughest teams to figure out what the hell they should do next year, because they had nothing this year. They weren't popular, they weren't good, they weren't notably terrible like Shanghai were last year. They were just nothing. They were just a nothing team. Okay, Vancouver Titans are just obvious. Because they were runaway and they were sold to Vancouver, they have really long contracts guaranteed for probably pretty good money. And the only people that are not under guaranteed contracts are the new additions that are mostly backups, people like Rappel and Tizzy, who joined the team later on. But I imagine that both of these people will be re-signed. Especially Tizzy will definitely be re-signed for 2020. Rappel, it's possible that they don't pick up Rappel's option for 2020, but I doubt it. Rappel is actually a pretty talented player. I used to enjoy watching him a lot on Element Mystic back in the day. I think he's pretty good. It's possible that they don't pick up Rappel's contract, but the team is going to be functionally exactly the same. They might pick up, a player here or there to bolster it, but there's nothing interesting really to go into on the Vancouver Titans from the contract point of view. Hureg narrowly missed out on being the most winningest player of all time because the Shock Absolutely 4-0 boomed them in the finals. Is it a coincidence that if you don't run Hureg, you lose? That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that they would have won if they ran Hureg, but they probably would have won if they had run Hureg. Super, if you're still in my chat, the only player that I've ever heard Super be scared of is Hureg. Okay, now let's take a look at the Washington Justice. Because if there was a team that you would say was the worst team of 2019, in stage 1, 2, and 3, it would have been the Washington Justice. It would have been Wizard Hyung's failed Frankenstein experiment. But they had a bit of a resurgence in stage 4, and they have a couple of players that signed original contracts in 2018 that have now started to run out. So Washington have also got rid of all of their coaches. So Washington are in an interesting position where they can try and build on some of the success and what was successful in Stage 4, whilst making rigorous changes to try and ensure that they don't just suck enormous donkey dick like they did in Stages 1 through 3. So, what did McGravy say? I think you're giving Florida too much credit, and I was on Florida. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Florida might have been the worst team of 2019. I mean, they were certainly the worst team of 2019 overall, but they might have been the worst team of Stages 1, 2, and 3. I don't know. It's difficult to tell. It's hard to tell. When you've got a rotten apple and a moldy orange, which one is worse? It's hard to tell. Okay, so the first person that I'm interested in talking about is Ark, because Ark posted this where is he? Yeah, he posted that he was a free agent and that he was looking for other offers, but he also said as well that there was a chance for him to stay in the Washington Justice. He's just a free agent, and it's a bit like Note or EQO or Carpe or something, where it's possible that they could get re-signed by the same team that they are their contract was just released by, but it's also they're open to offers from other teams in the league. So for Ark, his original contract, his 1+1 from 2018 that was signed with the NYXL and traded to the Washington Justice, has expired. I think that despite the failures of Washington Justice in 2019, Ark is probably still a pretty hot commodity. It's rare that you find somebody that has had experience on a championship caliber team like the NYXL and is bilingual English and Korean. For mixed roster teams, somebody like Ark is pretty important. And so despite the fact that he himself has not had a great performance this year, and nobody's talking about how great Ark was, and despite the fact that Washington Justice was pretty shit all season long, I think Ark could still get offers from a bunch of different teams. Especially those teams that are trying to make a foray into being mixed between Korean and Western, and between, more importantly, speaking in Korean and speaking in English. I think that Ark could be pretty interesting. Having said that, though, I expect Ark to be re-signed by the Washington Justice unless he gets an enormous bid from elsewhere. And I can't think of a team where he would be a natural fit outside of Washington. Washington just seems like the place that would need him the most, as well as the place where he has already started to integrate himself with the rest of the team. It doesn't make sense for Ark to go back to NYXL because that's kind of a waste of his bilingual talents. It's possible that he would be a good fit for the Philadelphia Fusion, yes. Or Guangzhou, or something like that, yeah. But he's also a very good fit for the Washington Justice, and I think that he might end up just getting re-signed. But yeah, there is potential for him to move elsewhere. And I think that he'll actually fetch a reasonable price because of his bilingual abilities and the fact that he has so much experience from NYXL. Let's look at Addo next. Addo is a free agent because his 1+1 from the Shanghai Dragons that got traded to the Washington Justice has now expired. When Addo was on Shanghai, there was some talk about him being a bit of a diamond in the rough. Obviously, Shanghai Dragons was terrible, but Addo was occasionally able to look like he was decent. He can play the Tracer, he can play the Genji, he can play the Pharah, he can play the Junkrat, and at times he looks like he's pretty competent on those heroes. The problem is, he's really not lived up to that potential in 2019 at all. 2019, Addo has done nothing. I wouldn't say I remember any performance from Addo at all. It's been absolutely outshone by other people on his team and just didn't really get much done at all. It's possible with better coaching that you might see something out of Addo, but let's put it this way. Addo is now a free agent in the same sense as Sparkle is now a free agent. Who would I go for? Addo, who looks like he's had some glimmers of potential in Owl, or Sparkle, somebody that's utterly unproven in Owl, but is a absolute freak beast mad cunt in Contenders. And I'm using Sparkle as an example. Sparkle turns 18 later on in the season and will have a lot of people bidding for him, so he'll be more expensive. But there are a lot of people that aren't as good as Sparkle, but are still super good, that are heading into free agency and would be able to be picked up in 2018. Be able to be picked up in 2020. So I feel like Ado is in a position where all of the Contenders talent is just going to be a better return on investment than Ado is. The expected value that you could get is way higher from these Contenders players because, yes, it's risky, but if the risk pays off, it's a very, very big play that you've made to get somebody like that into your team. Let's take a look at Janus as well, because his contract from the NYXL has expired, and he is now a free agent. Janus, the stonks from Janus were like, okay, he played on NYXL, but he was always worse than Mano, statistically and by the eye test. He had some maps where he came in and he was a specialist, like Kings Row, but he was even a little shaky on those. But, you know, his stonks were fairly high. And his stonks this season have just gone... And I would have to dig through the floor to be able to dig them up. Just like absolute big stonks down through the basement. Even though he had a bit of a resurgence in Stage 4 on Orisa, I would say that Janus's stonks overall have just gone way down to the point where I don't know who would want this guy on an OWL team, honestly. He does have experience. And he did look all right on the Orisa, but it is much harder to feed on Orisa. I can't really see anybody trying to pick him up. I think it would be strange for Washington Justice to re-sign him. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what Janus is going to do. I expect him to play in Contenders and be reasonably decent in Contenders. That's what I would imagine. So interesting as well to note is that of the acquisitions in 2019, so this was a brand new team, an expansion team in 2019. So they traded and got a couple of players like Ado, Ark, and Janus, who are now free agents. Hyonu, was Hyonu Yeah, Hyonu must have been on another team. What the fuck team was Hyonu on last year? Where was Hyonu? Was Hyonu from Contenders? I guess he's been released then. I guess they've already decided not to pick up his team option or something. I don't really understand that, because the minimum you can get signed to, as far as I'm aware, was a 1+1, which means that he should have team option. But I guess they must have already released him from his team option and just made him a free agent. Okay. Anyway, the other players that they signed, though, people like Stratus, are now on a team option, right? Because they signed 1+1s. And then we've also got Guido, who was transferred over but renegotiated his contract, or possibly was signed to a long contract at the beginning with the Seoul Dynasty, and he's still on team option. But Corey, as far as I can tell, is the only player that got signed. Yoshiman, thank you for the tier 1 sub. Corey is the only player that got signed at the beginning of 2019 who's still under contract. So Corey, as far as we can tell, was the only player that signed a long contract at the beginning of 2019. You compare that to Stratus. Stratus presumably signed a 1+1, but Corey has signed a 2+1, something like that, maybe even longer, which seems to indicate that they knew that Corey was going to be their best player even at the beginning of the league. Either that or he was really cheap, but because Corey's really good, I imagine that it was because he was good. They wanted to lock him down for a while. And that ended up working out. I mean, Corey is a very talented player, and I expect big things from him in the future as well. So that's... I think it would be nuts to let Stratus go as well. It is an option, but I think it would be kind of nutty to let him go. Now, let's talk about Sleepy as well, because he's a free agent now at the moment. So Sleepy's original contract with the Shock, 1+1, has now expired, and he's going to be able to look at a bunch of other teams. Sleepy ended up getting benched in Stage 4 for Guido, which is a weird scenario to be in. But I think you've also got to consider that the head coach was a Korean player. The majority of the players on the team were Korean. And and the people that he was playing with in the back line as well, and like the way that he would coordinate might have been a little difficult with the language barrier. Sleepy as a player in himself, I would rate as quite a bit better than Guido. So I don't think you can use the argument Sleepy was benched for Guido as like a reason why you wouldn't expect Sleepy to be able to get a bunch of offers from other teams in this offseason. I think that there are a bunch of different teams that Sleepy could go to, and he would be a good improvement over who they have currently. It's possible that he needs to work on his hero pool a little bit. I don't know that for a fact, but when I think about Sleepy, I normally think about his good performances on Zen. I don't really think about his, wide hero pool or the successes he's had on a bunch of different heroes in the past. And there have been a few instances where Sleepy has said weird stuff on social media about like being left out from the USA roster and stuff like that, where he might have a bit of an ego on him. But whenever I've talked with Sleepy, he seems like a good player, pretty marketable, easy to talk with and easy to do interviews with. And I think that he would be an improvement on a range of teams where they are looking specifically for players with experience, but players that are English-speaking flex supports. Having said that, I don't think that he is the best English-speaking flex support, and I don't think that he's like guaranteed to be a really good player in 2020. Sleepy's in a weird middle ground where you could argue that picking up somebody from Contenders is better, or, somebody like Reaper or Shaz or even Dogman were better English-speaking flex supports than Sleepy. There's an argument to be made there. But also, because Sleepy is a proven product, I could also see teams, really wanting to grab him because you just don't know how a player that comes up from Contenders is going to perform. So, not too sure about Sleepy. It should be an opportunity for him to pedal around to a couple of teams. I expect him to get, one or two offers, but it's possible that owners are going more for Contenders talent. Not sure. Sleepy to Houston would be the obvious choice, of course, but I don't know. Whenever that kind of conversation or topic comes up, you have to think back to the USA rosters that have always selected Raucus instead of Sleepy for whatever reason. I mean, they normally say stuff like communication and teamwork and this kind of shit, but I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen with him? And there's a bunch of players that I would expect Washington to drop as well and make some significant changes in the offseason. So there we go. Those are my thoughts on the contracts and how and what information is interesting from these teams as to how they work. Now, I think a lot of the people that are marked down as free agents, like for example, let's use Bishu or even Meko. Let's use Meko as an example. It's possible that Meko, by the time free agency comes around on the 7th in 2 days' time, is already re-signed to the NYXL. So this might already be out of date. Like, he might not still be a free agent. But I think for a bunch of different people, there's a lot of interesting information to gather from this that will indicate kind of what the thought process was when building these teams and which teams are competent and have, like, risk-averse versus very risky strategies.